Hello and welcome back, English learners. We're so excited to have you here for another episode. Today we have something truly fascinating for you. Imagine if you could improve your English while you sleep. Sounds impossible? Well, science says otherwise.
That's right, Adam. You might think that learning only happens when you're awake, but studies show that your brain keeps working while you sleep. And if you do it the right way, you can train your brain to absorb English faster, even while you're resting.
In today's episode, we're going to break down how you can use your sleep time to improve vocabulary, pronunciation, and even fluency. We'll also reveal the best techniques, real-life examples, and powerful exercises that will help you wake up speaking better English.
So, whether you're listening to this podcast in the morning, during the day, or right before bed, get ready, because we're about to show you how to turn your sleep into a powerful English learning tool.
So grab a notebook, get comfortable, and let's dive into the science of learning English while you sleep.
Chapter 1. Can you really learn while sleeping? Let's start with the big question. Is it really possible to learn English while sleeping? Or is this just another myth floating around the internet? Can your brain actually absorb a language while you're completely unconscious? It sounds almost like magic, right? But here's the thing. Millions of people around the world struggle with learning English. They try everything: classes, grammar exercises, watching videos, and yet, when it comes to actually speaking, they hesitate. What if there was a way to use the hours you're already sleeping to make English more natural and automatic?
That's a great way to put it, Sophia. I know a lot of our listeners might be skeptical right now. They might be thinking, wait a second, am I really going to wake up one day speaking perfect English just because I listened to some audio while sleeping? And the answer to that is, not exactly. Here's the truth. You can't learn something completely new while sleeping. Your brain won't magically pick up advanced vocabulary or complicated grammar rules overnight. But, and this is the important part, your brain can reinforce and strengthen the English you've already learned during the day. Think of it like planting a seed. During the day, when you study English, you're planting that seed in your mind. But at night, while you sleep, your brain waters that seed, strengthens the roots, and helps it grow naturally. That's how sleep learning works. It helps lock in information so that when you wake up, it feels more familiar, easier to recall, and more natural to use.
I love that example, Adam. And it's so true. Think about this. Have you ever had a song stuck in your head, even though you didn't try to memorize the lyrics? Maybe you heard it a few times on the radio or in a cafe, and suddenly you just know the words. That's because your brain absorbs sounds, patterns, and rhythms, even when you're not actively focusing on them. The same thing happens with language learning. If you expose your brain to English while you're sleeping, by playing English conversations, vocabulary lessons, or even just simple phrases, your brain is still processing that information in the background.
Exactly. And there's real science behind this. Studies in neuroscience have proven that sleep plays a critical role in memory retention. While you sleep, your brain isn't just resting, it's actively working, organizing everything you learned during the day. This is called memory consolidation, where your brain strengthens important information and stores it in long-term memory. So let's say during the day, you learned some new English phrases like, "How's it going?" instead of, "How are you?" That makes sense. Instead of, "I understand." "I can't make it." Instead of, "I won't be able to come." Now, if you hear these phrases again while sleeping, your brain will reinforce them, making them easier to recall the next time you need to use them. It's like extra practice, without any extra effort.
And that's why sleep learning is so powerful. It's not about replacing active learning. It's about boosting your learning speed. Imagine studying English for 30 minutes during the day, then reinforcing it for another 7 to 8 hours while you sleep. You're basically doubling your exposure without doing any extra work.
And the best part? It happens effortlessly. You don't need to sit down with a textbook or force yourself to memorize words. All you have to do is press play on an English audio track before bed and let your brain do the rest.
That's right. But here's the thing. Not all audio is effective for sleep learning. If you're listening to the wrong type of English content, it won't help at all. So, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about what kind of English you should listen to while sleeping and how to make sure it actually works.
So, if you're ready to unlock your brain's potential and start learning English, even in your sleep, keep listening. This is going to be life-changing. Blast off.
Chapter 2. The Science Behind Sleep Learning. So, how does this actually work? How can your brain learn while you sleep? It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, right? But the truth is, your brain doesn't just shut down when you fall asleep. It actually becomes incredibly active. In fact, your brain is constantly processing information, sorting memories, and even strengthening what you've learned throughout the day. But here's the most interesting part. Your sleep happens in different stages, and some of them are perfect for language learning.
That's right, Sophia. Your sleep isn't just one long, deep rest. It's made up of different cycles, and each one plays a unique role in how your brain functions. The two most important stages for learning English are deep sleep and light sleep. Now, let's break it down. Deep sleep, also known as slow-wave sleep, is where your brain does something incredible. It takes everything you learned during the day and organizes it like a filing system. Imagine you studied some new English words earlier like improve, practice, fluent. Now, while you sleep, your brain reviews and strengthens those words, making them easier to remember the next time you need them. This is called memory consolidation, and it's one of the biggest reasons why sleep is so important for learning.
And then there's the light sleep stage, which is equally fascinating. This is when your brain is still semi-active. It's not fully awake, but it's also not completely shut down. And guess what? This is the stage where your brain is most receptive to sounds, voices, and patterns. This is why listening to English podcasts, audiobooks, or learning tracks while sleeping can actually help you improve. Your brain absorbs the rhythm, pronunciation, and sentence structures, even if you're not consciously aware of it. It's like background music playing in your mind, and over time, your brain gets used to the sound of English more naturally.
Exactly. Have you ever woken up with a song stuck in your head? Maybe you weren't even paying attention when it played, but somehow your brain picked it up. That's because your subconscious continues processing sounds while you sleep. The same thing happens with language. If you play English conversations while sleeping, your brain absorbs and stores those patterns. So, let's say you hear a phrase like, "How's it going? Let's grab a coffee." That sounds like a good idea. Even if you don't memorize them consciously, your brain recognizes them. Then, the next time you hear these phrases in real life, they feel familiar, and you're more likely to use them naturally.
That's the magic of sleep learning. It's not about memorizing long lists of vocabulary while you sleep. It's about reinforcing what you've already learned. And the best part? It requires no extra effort. Just press play on an English audio track before bed, and your brain does the rest.
But here's something important. You can't just listen to any audio. If you play the wrong kind of content, it won't help at all. So, in the next chapter, we'll talk about what kind of English content works best for sleep learning and how to use it correctly.
Get ready, because once you start using sleep learning the right way, your English will improve faster than ever. Blast off. Chapter 3. What to listen to while sleeping. Now that we understand the science behind sleep learning, let's talk about the most important part. What should you actually listen to while you sleep? Because here's the thing. Not all English content will help you. In fact, some things might even make your sleep learning less effective. Imagine you're playing a fast, intense action movie while you sleep. There are loud explosions, quick conversations, and background music. Do you think your brain will absorb useful English from that? Probably not. Instead, you'll either wake up in the middle of the night feeling tired, or your brain will be too distracted to process anything helpful. So, if you want to maximize your English learning while sleeping, You need to listen to the right kind of content.
That's such an important point, Sophia. A lot of learners make the mistake of listening to fast, complicated dialogues or watching movies with heavy accents and slang. But your brain learns best when it hears clear, slow, and repetitive content. Here's what works best. Check Mark's sleep learning podcasts with common phrases. These are designed specifically for subconscious learning, using clear pronunciation and simple, useful sentences. Basic English conversations with real-life topics. Listening to short, everyday conversations helps you internalize sentence structures so that when you wake up, they feel more natural to you. Vocabulary-building audios that repeat new words. Repetition is key for memory. If you hear the same word multiple times in different contexts, your brain will remember it better. Guided English listening exercises with simple dialogues. These are slow, clear, and designed for learners, making it easier for your brain to absorb new phrases without stress.
And let's talk about what not to listen to while sleeping, because some types of audio can actually disturb your sleep instead of helping you learn. Fast, complex conversations. Your brain needs structure, not chaos. If the dialogue is too quick, you won't be able to process it properly. Loud music or action-packed movies. These can wake you up or make it harder for your brain to focus on language patterns. Heavy background noise. If an audio track has too many sound effects or overlapping voices, it won't be effective for sleep learning.
That's why the best approach is to choose a structured learning audio that matches your level and listen at a comfortable volume. If the content is too easy, you won't learn much. If it's too difficult, your brain will tune it out. You want something in the middle, challenging enough to reinforce learning but simple enough to follow subconsciously.
Exactly. And one more tip. If you're serious about sleep learning, use the same audio for multiple nights in a row. Repetition is what strengthens memory, so hearing the same phrases again and again will help your brain absorb them naturally.
That's such a great point. So now that you know what kind of content to listen to, let's move on to the next big question. When is the best time to start sleep learning? Because timing matters, and if you do it the right way, you'll see faster results.
Stick with us, because in the next chapter, we're going to give you the perfect sleep learning routine so you can start improving your English tonight. Blast off. Chapter 4. When and how to use sleep learning for maximum results. Now that we know what kind of content to listen to, let's talk about something just as important. When and how to use sleep learning for maximum results. Because if you do this the wrong way, you might not see any progress at all. Think about it. If you fall asleep with loud music or random sounds playing, your brain will struggle to absorb anything useful. But if you set up your sleep learning routine correctly, you can wake up with better English skills every day. So, what's the best way to use sleep learning? Let's break it down step by step.
That's such a great point, Sophia. A lot of people think they can just play any English audio and instantly learn while they sleep, but timing and technique are just as important as the content itself. Here's the ideal sleep learning routine to help your brain absorb English naturally. Step 1. Listen before sleeping. About 15 to 30 minutes before bed, start listening to an English podcast, conversation, or learning track. This helps your brain get familiar with the words while you're still awake. Step 2. Play audio at a low volume. Once you're ready to sleep, play the same audio at a very soft, comfortable volume. It should be clear enough to hear, but not so loud that it disturbs your sleep. Step 3. Use an audio loop. Choose an audio track that repeats words, phrases, or conversations. Repetition is the key to making new information stick in your memory. Step 4. Sleep in a quiet environment. Avoid distractions like TV sounds, background noise, or notifications from your phone. Your brain needs a calm, focused atmosphere to absorb the English sounds properly. Step 5. Review the same content in the morning. When you wake up, spend 5 to 10 minutes reviewing what you listened to. Your brain will recall information more easily, and you'll notice that certain words or phrases feel more familiar.
That last step is so important. If you review the content in the morning, you lock it into your active memory. It's like giving your brain a second chance to process everything it picked up while you were sleeping. And here's an extra tip. Don't switch to a new audio track every night. Stick with the same one for at least a few nights in a row. This way, your brain has a chance to recognize patterns and absorb the language more deeply.
Absolutely. The mistake many learners make is changing their learning materials too quickly. But fluency comes from hearing the same words and phrases repeatedly until they become second nature. So, if you're listening to an audio lesson about common phrases, don't just play it once and move on. Listen to it every night for a week. By the end of the week, you'll notice that you can recall certain words and sentences without even trying.
Exactly. And remember, sleep learning is not a magic trick. It won't replace active learning, but it will speed up the process. Think of it as extra practice for your brain while you rest.
And now that you know when and how to use sleep learning, let's move on to something really exciting: real-life success stories. In the next chapter, we'll share stories from people who have actually used sleep learning to improve their English, and how you can do the same. Blast off.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever gone to bed with a song stuck in your head and woken up still singing it? You weren't trying to memorize the lyrics, but somehow your brain just absorbed them. That's because while you sleep, your brain continues processing sounds, memories, and information from the day. Now, imagine if instead of a song, you had English words and phrases playing in the background. Your brain would be absorbing those words, making them more familiar and natural the next day. That's exactly how sleep learning works.
That's such a great example, Sophia. And it's not just music. This happens with any repeated sound or pattern. Have you ever been around someone who speaks with a strong accent, and after a while, you start copying their way of speaking without even realizing it? That's because your brain is constantly picking up patterns in the background. When you sleep, your subconscious mind keeps working, and if you expose it to English while sleeping, it will recognize, organize, and store those words more effectively.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting. While you sleep, your brain goes through different sleep stages, and each stage plays a different role in memory and learning. During deep sleep, your brain takes everything you learned during the day and organizes it, like putting important files into a folder. This helps you store new vocabulary and sentence structures in your long-term memory. During light sleep, your brain is still semi-active, which means it can process sounds, voices, and language patterns in the background. That's why playing English audio while sleeping helps. It's reinforcing those patterns and making them feel more natural when you wake up.
So, let's break it down. If you learn something during the day and then hear it again at night, your brain is much more likely to remember it. This is why repetition is the key to fluency. Think about when you were a child. You didn't learn your first language by studying grammar books, right? You learned it by hearing words again and again from your parents, from TV, from songs. The same concept applies here.
That's such an important point. Many learners think they have to memorize thousands of words to become fluent. But in reality, fluency comes from exposure and repetition. The more you hear English, the easier it gets to understand and speak. So if you listen to English phrases while you sleep, your brain is still absorbing pronunciation, rhythm, and sentence structures, even if you're not aware of it.
And the best part? This happens effortlessly. You don't have to sit down with a book or actively concentrate. You're literally improving your English while doing nothing, just sleeping.
But of course, to make this work, you need to listen to the right kind of English audio, not just anything. So, in the next chapter, we'll talk about what kind of content is best for sleep learning and how to use it effectively.
That's right. If you want to wake up speaking better English, you need to be strategic about what you listen to. So stay with us, because we're about to reveal the most effective types of sleep learning content.
Chapter 6. The Power of Repetition in Sleep Learning. If there's one secret to learning English faster and more naturally, it's repetition. And when it comes to sleep learning, repetition isn't just important. It's everything. Have you ever noticed that when you hear something multiple times, it just sticks in your mind? Think about a catchy commercial jingle or a phrase your friend always says. You don't memorize it on purpose. It just happens. That's exactly how your brain works with language learning. The more times you hear a phrase, the more familiar it becomes. And the more familiar it is, the easier it is for you to recall and use it in real-life conversations.
That's such a great point, Sophia. And this is exactly why listening to English while sleeping works best when you repeat the same content over multiple nights. If you play a different podcast every night, your brain won't have time to fully absorb the patterns and phrases. Instead, the best way to make sleep learning work is to follow a structured repetition system, so that your brain gets multiple exposures to the same words and phrases before moving on to something new. Here's a simple 7-day plan to make sure your brain actually remembers what you hear. Day 1 to 3. Listen to basic greetings and common phrases, things like, "How's it going?" "Nice to meet you." "Can I get a coffee, please?" Your goal here is to get comfortable with the rhythm and pronunciation of everyday English. Day 4 to 6. Add more vocabulary and short conversations. These should be slightly longer and cover topics like ordering food, talking about the weather, or introducing yourself. Day 7 plus. Start listening to more natural, real-life English, things like slow podcasts, short stories, or guided English lessons. By this stage, your brain will already recognize some of the patterns from the first few days, making it easier to absorb more complex sentences.
And let's not forget, repetition doesn't mean memorizing word for word. You don't need to force yourself to remember every single phrase. Just hearing them repeatedly will train your brain to recognize and recall them naturally in conversations. Think of it like learning a new song. The first time you hear it, you only catch a few words, but after a few listens, you start singing along without even trying. That's because your brain picks up patterns and stores them subconsciously. And let's not forget, repetition doesn't mean memorizing word for word. You don't need to force yourself to remember every single phrase. Just hearing them repeatedly will train your brain to recognize and recall them naturally in conversations. Think of it like learning a new song. The first time you hear it, you only catch a few words. But after a few listens, you start singing along without even trying. That's because your brain picks up patterns and stores them subconsciously.
Exactly. And the cool thing about repetition in sleep learning is that you don't have to actively study. It happens automatically. If you stick with the same content for a few days, your brain will lock in those words and phrases, making them feel as natural as your native language. But here's one important tip. Don't switch content too soon. Many learners get impatient and move on to new material too quickly. But fluency comes from mastering the basics first.
That's right. Master the simple conversations before moving to advanced content. If you hear "how's it going?" 20 times in different conversations, eventually you won't even have to think about it. It'll just come out naturally. And here's an extra bonus tip. After using the same audio for a few days, try speaking some of the phrases out loud when you wake up. Even if you don't remember everything perfectly, just saying a few sentences will help activate what your brain absorbed while sleeping.
I love that. So here's what you need to do. Pick one audio track and listen to it for at least 3 nights before switching. Stick to this repetition system, and your English fluency will start improving effortlessly.
And now that you know why repetition is so powerful, let's move on to something even more exciting: how to track your progress and see real results from sleep learning. Chapter 7. How to track your progress. Okay, so now you're listening to English while you sleep, repeating the same content for a few nights, and letting your brain absorb the language effortlessly. But how do you know if it's actually working? The biggest mistake learners make is not checking their progress. They assume that just because they listened to something, they automatically learned it. But here's the truth. Progress in language learning is not always obvious unless you track it. So, how can you tell if sleep learning is helping you? Here are 3 simple but powerful ways to check your progress. Test yourself in the morning, right when you wake up, before looking at your phone or starting your day. Try recalling a new word or phrase you heard during the night. Even if you only remember part of it, that's a good sign your brain is storing information. Write down words you remember. Keep a small notebook by your bed or use your phone's notes app. Every morning, write down any English words or phrases that come to mind, even if you're not sure you remember them perfectly. Practice speaking during the day. The real test of learning is using English in real conversations. If a word or phrase from your sleep audio suddenly comes to mind while speaking, that means your brain successfully absorbed it.
That's such great advice, Sophia. And let's not forget, tracking progress isn't just about seeing results immediately. Sometimes you won't notice an improvement right away, but after a few weeks of consistent sleep learning, you'll suddenly recognize words more easily in conversations, movies, and podcasts. Another great way to track progress is by recording yourself speaking. Try this. Checkmark. Before starting sleep learning, record yourself talking about a simple topic, introducing yourself, describing your day, or talking about your hobbies. After 2 weeks, record yourself again. Compare the 2 recordings. Do you sound more natural? Are you pausing less? Are words coming to you faster? If yes, then sleep learning is working.
I love that idea. It's so easy to feel like you're not improving because progress happens gradually. But when you compare recordings, you'll hear the difference, and that will motivate you to keep going. Another way to check progress. Test yourself with small conversations. If you're using sleep learning to improve common phrases, challenge yourself to use at least one new phrase in a real conversation every day. If the phrase comes to mind without hesitation, that means your brain has truly absorbed it.
That's such a powerful test. And for those who might not have speaking partners, you can still track progress by using shadowing exercises. Listen to an audio clip, pause it, and try to repeat exactly what you heard. If you're able to match the pronunciation and rhythm more easily than before, that means your listening skills and fluency are improving.
And don't forget, progress isn't just about learning new words. It's also about feeling more confident in English. If you find yourself understanding more conversations, thinking in English more naturally, or speaking with less hesitation, those are all signs that sleep learning is helping.
Absolutely. The key takeaway here is track your progress, but don't stress over perfection. Small improvements add up over time. Even if you only remember 1 new phrase per week, that's 52 new phrases per year. Imagine how much more fluent you'll be if you stay consistent.
Chapter 8. Does sleep learning work for everyone? This is such a great question. Can anyone learn English while sleeping? Or does it only work for certain people? The answer is, sleep learning works for everyone, but it's not a magic trick. It's important to understand that sleep learning doesn't replace active learning. If you've never studied English before and just start listening to English while you sleep, you're not going to wake up fluent. But here's the good news. If you're already learning English actively, sleep learning can supercharge your progress and help you remember and use English more naturally.
That's right, Sophia. Think of sleep learning like reinforcement, not a shortcut. If you've studied a new word or phrase during the day, hearing it while you sleep will strengthen that knowledge. It's like your brain is reviewing everything without you having to put in extra effort. Let's say during the day, you learn these new phrases. Let's grab a coffee. What do you think about that? That makes sense. Then, at night, you listen to an English conversation with those same phrases. Your brain recognizes them, processes them, and stores them in long-term memory. The next time you need to use them in a real conversation, they'll come to you naturally, without hesitation.
Exactly. So if you're actively studying English, sleep learning will speed up your progress. But if you're not studying at all, Just listening to English while sleeping won't be enough to make you fluent. Here's who sleep learning works best for. Check mark people who are already practicing English daily. Even just 10 to 15 minutes of active learning will make sleep learning far more effective. Learners who struggle with remembering vocabulary. If you always forget words after learning them, listening to them at night will help lock them into your memory. People who have trouble with pronunciation. Sleep learning helps train your brain to recognize natural pronunciation patterns, so speaking feels easier. Anyone who wants to think in English faster. The more you expose your brain to English, the faster your brain processes it, which means less hesitation when speaking.
That's such a great breakdown, Sophia. And one more thing. Sleep learning works even better when you're relaxed. If you go to bed stressed, your brain won't absorb information as easily. But if you listen to calm, clear English audio before bed, your brain will be in the perfect state to learn.
That's a great point. Sleep learning is most effective when it's part of a bigger learning routine. That means practice English during the day, even if it's just a few minutes of speaking, reading, or listening. Use sleep learning as reinforcement. Play an English conversation, vocabulary lesson, or phrases you want to remember. Review in the morning. Spend 5 minutes recalling words and phrases from your sleep learning session.
And this combination is what makes sleep learning so powerful. If you do all 3 steps, you'll see a huge difference in your fluency in just a few weeks.
Chapter 9. 7-Day Sleep Learning Challenge. All right. Now that we know how sleep learning works and who can benefit from it, let's get into something exciting. A 7-day challenge to help you start seeing real progress with your English while you sleep. The biggest mistake learners make is being inconsistent. They listen to English one night, forget the next, and never see results. But if you commit to just 1 week of structured sleep learning, you'll notice a real difference in your listening, vocabulary recall, and speaking fluency.
That's so true, Sophia. Consistency is everything. This challenge is super simple and designed to help your brain get used to absorbing English effortlessly while you sleep. Night 1 to 2. Start simple. Listen to basic English phrases before bed. Focus on common sentences like, "How's your day?" "I'd like a cup of coffee, please." "Where's the nearest bus stop?" Your goal is to familiarize your brain with natural sentence structures and pronunciation. Night 3 to 4. Add some vocabulary-building audios. Listen to lists of commonly used words in different contexts. For example, focus on food vocabulary, travel-related words, common daily activities. Repetition is key here. The more your brain hears a word, the easier it is to recall. Night 5 to 6. Now step it up by listening to full conversations. Choose slow, clear English dialogues. This helps your brain process real-life conversation flow and learn natural expressions. Night 7. Test yourself. When you wake up, challenge yourself to recall at least 3 words or phrases you heard while sleeping. Write them down, say them out loud, or try using them in a sentence.
If you complete this 7-day challenge, you'll be amazed at how much English your brain can absorb. Even if you only remember a few phrases at first, that's already proof that sleep learning is working.
Absolutely. And don't forget, this is just 1 week. Imagine what happens when you keep doing this for a month or even 3 months. Your listening will improve, your speaking will feel more natural, and you'll start recognizing English words effortlessly.
And remember, the key is repetition. Don't switch to new content every night. Stick with the same phrases for a few days before moving on. Your brain needs multiple exposures to truly absorb and remember the words.
So here's the challenge. Start tonight. Pick an English audio track, set it to play at a soft volume, and let your brain do the rest.
Chapter 10. How to combine sleep learning with active practice. All right, so now that you've started sleep learning with our 7-day challenge, let's take it to the next level. The best way to speed up your progress is to combine sleep learning with active practice during the day. Some learners think they can just listen to English while sleeping and suddenly wake up fluent. But the real secret is using what you hear at night during the day.
That's right, Sophia. Think of sleep learning as a way to reinforce what you've learned, not as a replacement for practice. If you want to see real fluency improvements, you need to activate what your brain absorbed while sleeping. Here's how you can do it. Morning review, 5 to 10 minutes. Right after waking up, write down or say out loud any words or phrases you remember from your sleep learning session. Even if you don't remember much at first, this process helps your brain recall the information faster. Daily Speaking Challenge, 10 to 15 minutes. Choose 1 or 2 words or phrases from your sleep learning and use them in a sentence. Say them out loud, write them in a journal, or use them in a real conversation. Active listening, 15 to 30 minutes. During the day, listen to the same audio you used at night, but this time, pay attention to the meaning and pronunciation. Try repeating sentences after the speaker.
The more you actively use what you learned while sleeping, the faster your brain will store it as permanent knowledge. Imagine hearing the phrase, "that makes sense" at night, repeating it in the morning, and using it in a conversation later that day. By the end of the week, that phrase will feel natural and automatic.
Exactly. And don't forget, fluency is all about exposure and repetition. Sleep learning helps you absorb English, but speaking, listening, and writing during the day helps you activate it.
So, if you're serious about improving your English, make sure you're combining both methods, sleep learning at night and active practice during the day. This combination will double your progress in just a few weeks.
Chapter 11. The Biggest Mistakes in Sleep Learning. Now, before we wrap up, let's talk about the biggest mistakes learners make when trying sleep learning, because if you're doing it wrong, you won't see any results.
That's so true, Adam. Here are the most common mistakes that can slow down your progress. Listening to random, unstructured content. If you play fast conversations, complicated news reports, or loud movies, your brain won't absorb anything useful. Always choose clear, slow, repetitive English audio. Changing content too quickly. Many learners listen to something new every night, but repetition is key. Stick to the same phrases for a few nights before moving on. Ignoring active learning, like we said earlier, sleep learning alone isn't enough. You need to review and use what you heard to actually remember it. Listening at the wrong volume. If your audio is too loud, it might wake you up. If it's too quiet, your brain won't process it. Find a comfortable balance. Giving up too soon. Sleep learning isn't instant magic. It takes time. You might not notice results after one night, but if you're consistent for weeks, you'll see real improvements.
If you avoid these mistakes and follow the right steps, you'll make huge progress in your fluency without any extra effort.
So don't just try it for 1 or 2 nights. Commit to a full month, track your progress, and see the difference. Chapter 12. Your 30-day sleep learning plan. If you've completed the 7-day challenge, it's time to level up with a full 30-day sleep learning plan.
This plan will help you build a strong habit and improve your fluency month by month. Week 1. Start with common phrases and basic vocabulary, greetings, everyday expressions. Week 2. Focus on sentence building and short conversations, ordering food, asking for directions. Week 3. Listen to longer dialogues and storytelling, short English stories, slow news. Week 4. Challenge yourself with natural spoken English, real conversations, intermediate-level podcasts.
By the end of this 30-day plan, your brain will be used to hearing and processing English faster, and you'll notice a huge improvement in your speaking and listening skills.
So, are you ready to commit to a full month of sleep learning? If yes, start tonight, follow the steps, and watch your English improve effortlessly.
Wow, we covered so much in this episode. From the science of sleep learning to the best methods, biggest mistakes, and a 30-day plan. Now it's time for you to take action.
That's right. Sleep learning is a powerful tool, but only if you use it the right way. Follow the challenge, track your progress, and stay consistent. You'll be amazed at the results.
And if you found this episode helpful, share it with a friend who's also learning English. Let's help more people improve their fluency effortlessly.
We'll see you in the next episode. Until then, keep learning, keep practicing, and let your brain do the work while you sleep. Thank you.